framework agreement. Darkstar and I went looking for some more data today. Today is Tuesday, June 27th, on non-solicitation. And poof, right into our hands fell the framework agreement that's been leaked. What does this mean? We'll go through what this framework agreement says, and then more what it means. What does it say? Well, it doesn't say anything different than what we saw in the press release June 6th, because the press release was derived from this framework agreement. It's really just a letter of intent with a little bit of meat in it. Okay, fine. What does that mean? The critical things that the parties wanted, meaning the PIF and the PGA Tour, are the only things that are binding. So they signed this agreement that said, okay, these are the things that we'll agree to right now, right away, and we'll be bound by those. They'll happen. And as soon as we sign it. And then everything else in here can go away. If we can reach further agreement on various details that are super important, really the whole entity, then great. If we can't, then it just all goes away. So terrific. That's not new. We knew that. But what is in here that was not in the June 6th press release? Non-solicitation. Okay, what does that mean? The parties have all agreed not to poach each other's players while they're negotiating. We figured that. That's why we went looking for it. We were going to talk about it today, in fact, but now we get to talk about the whole framework agreement. So they've agreed, rightly so, hey, nobody's coming over here to live. You're not taking anybody back. Nothing's happening. Status quo until we've either agreed to set up NewCo and run as a partnership into the future as a global golf, pro golf partnership, or we don't. And if we don't by December 31st of this year, then fine. Then all bets are off and we'll go back to the way we were. So that was interesting. Not surprising, but interesting. The only other binding things were confidentiality. Let's keep it a secret. And that we're doing this, or the terms of it, which didn't work out too well. And that this termination will happen by December 31st. Now, they can also extend it. So it's one of those agreements that we'll just keep getting to know each other. We'll keep dating. We'll keep dating, our third date, our fifth date. Now we're really getting along. Let's go on vacation together. And then maybe we'll get married at the end. Fine. Our goal is to get married, but we'll see how it goes. You already knew about dropping the lawsuits. That happened. That was binding as well. So dropping the lawsuits, don't solicit each other's players. This thing can terminate by the end of the year, unless we extend it, which we can do. And let's agree to keep it a secret. That's it. Nothing else in the agreement is binding. So let's just wrap it into what does it mean? What does it all mean? What it boils down to is this. The PGA Tour representing pro golf, let's say, that's fair, for the last 40, 50 years, since 1968. It's a small business. And we keep saying this in our comments, and those of you that are going back and forth with us in comments on YouTube and on Twitter, love it. Love the debate. Be nice, and we'll be nice, because that's how we can then debate. Let's have a debate on ideas. It's not a personality contest, per se. So global golf is a small business. It's $1.5 billion, maybe. For these big private equity firms, big investments, investment vehicles, big companies that are, $100 billion, $200 billion or more, $1.5 billion is not worth talking about. It seems like a lot of money, maybe to some. It's not. It's really not. That's gross revenue, not even counting, what's the profit margin, right? Maybe it's 20%, maybe it's 30 would be really high. It's a couple $100 million. So what does that mean? Why do I bring that up? It's whoever owns pro golf is not in it for the money. There isn't any money. It's a hobby. It's a hobby. And Darkstar and I have a whole big show planned that really talks about that in great detail. Not going to do it today. It's extremely interesting to us, at least, hopefully to you. But it's a hobby. So what in the world, or why in the world, is Saudi Arabia, is the PIF, interested in this little teeny tiny business? They're going to put in, they've already put in $1 billion, let's say, to build LIV into what it is. And now they're going to put in another something, 500 million to 2 or 3 billion, somewhere in there. Not all at once. Not all at once. They'll commit to a number and then start putting it in tranches and start watching how that capital is being utilized, making sure things are going their way, because no, they don't own voting control of the new entity. Even though Yasser Al-Rumayyan is the chairman, they won't have voting control. They don't want voting control. Well, let's go right there. Why would they agree to put in all this money and not have voting control? Because they don't care. They don't care. They don't care to run this lemonade stand. They really don't. This is not how you would go about it if you did. So it's obvious that they don't. That's not their objective. What do they want then? What do you want? Well, we want to be a member, PIF would say. We want to be part of the pro golf ecosystem, to participate, to be there, to be a part of it. Oh, well, that's lovely. Why do you want that? Deal making. Corporate elites tend to be playing golf, tend to play golf, tend to be around these golf tournaments. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them. And this is a great platform to do two things: have access to these connections, get to know them on a personal level at these golf tournaments, which is a great time to do that, play golf, all that stuff that you get into this club of these corporate titans all over the Western Hemisphere or Western world, not necessarily hemisphere, but the big golf countries, and then deal making. Why do they want that? Well, because they have about $1 trillion to invest in the next 10 years or so. Go look at the 2030 plan, the Saudi 2030, Vision 2030. That's a lot of money. It's not easy to do that. How do you invest that kind of money in that kind of time? It's hard. You don't want to get caught in bad deals. You want access to deals. Think in common terms. It's like, oh, I would love to get a piece of that new, IPO, that new initial public offering. Can I get a few shares? Because I know I can get it at $5 and it's going to go to $50 right away. It'll be awesome. No, you can't have that. We're reserving those shares for our preferred clients. Well, the PIF wants to be a preferred client in these deals, in these companies that people are lined up to invest in. Why? Because they want to diversify their economy away from oil. That's what they're saying. They've been saying it for years now. And they think that golf, being the corporate sport, or the sport of corporate titans, let's call it that. It's not the sport of kings, it's the sport of corporate titans. And it is. We want to be a part of that. And if it costs us a couple, $3-5 billion, big deal. The other $995 billion, if it's $1 trillion, which is pretty much the number people are using, we have $5 billion to throw at this to give us a platform. We have $995 billion that we still need to invest. So this is a rounding error, and it gets us what we want. So what does that turn into? They want a tournament. And this is in the framework agreement, actually. It says that the PIF will become a title sponsor, a marquee sponsor, whatever the language was, our highest level of sponsorship. The PIF will become that. Fine. So they're going to sponsor a tournament. They're going to sponsor maybe a couple of tournaments. They're going to put in cash. Everything that we've already said they're going to do. This is just the form that it's going to take. Fine. And the details aren't worked out yet. But under the covers, what do we think? They want a tournament. They want the PGA Tour brand in the Middle East. Probably in Saudi Arabia. Can they move it around? Sure. Does it have to be there right away? No. Will they build a great big golf complex in addition to the ones they already have? Maybe, probably. But they want it there. Why? Because they're trying to westernize their economy. They want to be part of that more mainstream Western economic situation, let's call it that, which would make investments easier to go to Saudi Arabia, for people to feel good about having them as investors. All of those things equal speed and access to these investment deals that they want. So golf makes total sense. So they definitely want a tournament over there. And while we're at it, let's make it a major. Because we've been saying in our comments, at least, we haven't had a show, that NUCO's probably top challenge will be to create 2 new majors, at least 2. That's our number, but maybe they want more, but at least 2, because the 4 majors in golf are not owned by pro golf. That stinks. Imagine if the NFL didn't own the Super Bowl. That would not be good for the NFL. Well, The PGA Tour does not own the four majors. Far from it. And their tournaments they're not as interesting as those four majors. Well, how does NewCo fix that? Well, they have President's Cup, and we think that's going to be a first target. And we think they'll rebrand it into Champions Cup. And we think, Darkstar and I both think, that Champions Cup will certainly be a LIV versus PGA Tour. Great. It's a grudge match, rivals, awesome, lot of interest. When would we do it? January seems like a good time. That's when the Tournament of Champions in Hawaii takes place. Let's bump that, and we'll put in there the Champions Cup, and that'll be somewhere in the Middle East. And the format for that would be a team thing, probably. We think, but you could set it up any way you want. However you get to do it to maximize interest in January between the American NFL playoffs and the Super Bowl is a perfect time to be doing that. A good time to be doing that. And then the other major is going to be the Players Championship, probably. And that's on the schedule already for March. So now the schedule's starting to take shape because the four majors sort of take up most of summer. And then they're going to keep the FedEx Cup, presumably, in August. So the calendar is a real challenge. Another show on that. Darkstar really wants to get after that, and that'll be a really interesting show because there's only so much calendar for all these things. And look how fast we're talking today, and there's so much more to go over. 2 new majors, looking at my notes. Okay, so what do we want to think of this thing as? And we'll leave today's show on this thought. How to think about NewCo and the PIF being the money and the PGA Tour being the management. Fine, that's what it looks like in this framework agreement, although they have to work out all new agreements, so the details. But we think that's how it will shape up, again, because the Saudis don't care to manage this thing. It's not a moneymaker. So why bother? Right. They don't care. What they want is the access. So we're going to think of the PIF as the banker. They have the banker's role in this thing. No surprise, right? We're just putting a term on it. We already knew this, but banker and the banker's influence. And if you're the banker for the entity, do you have influence? Oh yes. You can go look at countries that have waged wars in history and the importance of banking that to winning those conflicts, including the American Revolution against Britain, where famously the Americans went and tried to get money and help from France, and they ended up getting a venture capital deal from Holland. Great story, by the way. So being the banker to pro golf is a great spot, and that's probably exactly where the Saudis are thinking they fit in, and that gives them everything they want. They have tremendous influence, but they don't have to run the day-to-day. The PGA Tour needs to run the day-to-day, which leads to a final point I'll make, and everything goes. So PGA Tour will sort of manage affairs day-to-day. Presumably they're good at that and can get better. And the PIF will be the banker and have tremendous influence because they're putting in the money in tranches based on, hey, how's our capital working? No, please don't do that. How about focus on this, etc. And to back up yesterday's show, is LIV going to go away? No, there's no reason for it to go away. Maybe it's all team golf going forward. Yeah, maybe. But whatever it becomes, if it changes at all, I'm not saying that it will, it has a definite role here, a decided role. Everything we said yesterday still holds true. Nothing has changed in this framework agreement that got stolen probably or leaked, whatever. Maybe they wanted it out there, who knows. But so the final bonus point, maybe, could have made it off the top, but in the framework agreement, and if you get a chance, go read it. It's on Twitter. It's floating around there. You can find it easily. The PGA Tour, it's clear in the framework agreement that PGA Tour is putting all its eggs in. Now, we knew that from the press release on June 6th, but it's even a little clearer in the language in the agreement. The PGA Tour is putting all their eggs in this thing. Why? Because they need the money, and they don't have anything. They don't have any money. So when PIF came to the table in London to sit down with Ed and Jimmy, like, all right, what do you guys got? We have money. What do you have, the PGA Tour? And, Ed and Jimmy said, well, we have us. We have our tournaments. We have our sponsors. We have our corporate relations. How's that? Yeah. Well, it was interesting to the Saudis, thank goodness for the PGA Tour. And so the PGA Tour has to put all their rights into the new company. That is why they need to have voting control. Because look, we're putting everything in there. My house, my car, my kids, everything's going into this new co. I have to be able to have voting control, or I just can't do that. And here was why the deal is coming together. Because the Saudis said, fine, we understand that, no problem. Because Saudis don't want control over the day-to-day. They just have the banking relationship, which is all they need, and they can pull the strings in the way they wish to do with that type of arrangement. We'll get Darkstar back on camera hopefully soon. We're still chasing him. But for today, hit us up with your comments. Definitely check us on Twitter because we'll be doing more and more there. Still need to pick up the pace there, but we're doing more and more there. So you can comment there as well as on YouTube comments. And we'll see you hopefully real soon, a follow-up on this episode. For now, B-Team is out. We don't charge for our videos. We don't tease you with some of the information and then make you go somewhere else and buy the good stuff. We want to help. So we just give it all to you right here. And if you'd like to maybe give us $1 or $2, that would be awesome. We're on Venmo. It's super easy. Just hit us up there, connect, and whatever you want to do. We love it. We appreciate it.